I guess we thought that maybe Susan Orlean and LaRoche could fall in love.
Okay, but I'm saying it's like I don't want to cram in sex or guns or car chases, or characters, learning profound life lessons or growing or coming to like each other or overcoming obstacles to succeed in the end. I mean, it's the book isn't like that, and life isn't like that. It just isn't. And I feel very strongly about this.
We interrupt this program to bring you
Nick
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. Mr. Referee, ring the bell, lock the door. It's time for a real cage match. The Real Cage Match is a special review series where your Real Movie Guys review 12 films from the legendary actor Nicolas Cage, have them go one-on-one in a tournament-style battle to determine which one truly is the cagiest of them all. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Adaptation. A lovelorn screenwriter becomes desperate as he tries and fails to adapt The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean for the screen. Very different kind of movie, guys. When I was kind of coming up with some of the movies when we were discussing what we wanted to review, I wanted to give, Nicolas Cage a good movie, right? I this is one I've always heard about. I've never actually seen it before, so this is my first time. And I have to tell you, Adaptation, surprisingly, I really, really enjoyed this movie. And I think Nicolas Cage was the perfect actor to be able to pull this movie off, especially when you look into some of the nuances and stuff that they kind of did with this film. There's a reason, he got a nod for Best Actor in this movie. Meryl Streep and Chris Cooper actually winning in this movie. I'd have to say, this is probably one of Nicolas Cage's best movies. And I really can't wait to talk about it with you guys. But before I do that, Adam, what's going on, man? What'd you think?
What a fascinating premise for a movie.
Right.
I initially had read the description of what this movie was going to be. And at first I had to reread it. And it's like, wait, what is going on here? Mm-hmm. And then I waited till I actually saw the movie. And I was like, okay, now I get it. It's very meta, if you will. It goes deeper and deeper. And I was like, whoa. Well, this is very strange. It's very odd. It's very, very interesting, but I kind of enjoyed it.
It's weird how this movie kind of sets up, because it starts off very, not really that interesting, I guess you could argue, where it's just like a screenwriter, Nick Cage is taking on a script. He wants to adapt a book, and slowly it's like a descent into madness almost. And like you said, like a meta kind of storytelling of Meryl Streep's character, who's the author of the book that Nicolas Cage is adapting. His twin brother is also writing a script. And also on top of that, you have the other story with Chris Cooper, what's actually happening. This movie just has so many different layers to it. It's an adaptation of an adaptation of an adaptation on top of it. And I don't think I've ever seen a movie quite like this, and still kind of haven't, to be honest with you. I can't think of any other movie that's very similar to this thing.
Yeah, it's just so odd how it's the premise of adapting is all over this movie,
and I love that. And then again, I can't describe it like anything else I've ever seen. That's just so interesting to me, and how tough it is to actually adapt something. And like you said, that multiple meaning of adaptation that comes across from this movie, I think is incredibly interesting. And again, Nick Cage, I think, is the perfect actor to do that. How about you, John? What'd you think of this one? I know you're the scholarly type over there.
Oh yes, very scholarly. I'll be honest, for the first half of this movie, probably,
right,
I really didn't understand completely what was going on.
That's reasonable.
And I was like,
okay.
And then as it started going through, you started to understand it even more. But by the end, it was really good. I thought it was a decent movie.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot to be said about this movie, because, you can have those people that are going to be out there going, I understood this movie completely from the bottom of my soul. I know everything that happened. You kind of don't. to be honest. And I think that's kind of the point where you're kind of like thrown for a loop a lot of the times what's going on. Like Nicolas Cage playing, you know, the screenwriter, Charlie Kaufman, having a twin brother. Is he really there? I don't even know if he was real through half of the movie, to be honest with you. I went to Julie a couple of times when we were watching this. I'm like, is he really there? Or is that made? I really thought he was made up. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to it, but it's one of those things like you don't really know. And then it jumping back and forth. Like, did this really happen? Did that really happen? Whose adaptation of a story is the correct adaptation? Because again, at the end of the day, they're all kind of just adaptations of different things that happened. And again, that's just so interesting to me. Julie, I know you really were into this movie when we were watching it too.
Yeah, like you and Adam said, you know, just the different ideas of adaptation, like between actually adapting, you know, a book into a film, but also, you know, the plants, the orchids adapting, humans adapting throughout life, the journey that Charlie and Susan Orlean both take with their projects. It's really was just an interesting movie and told in such a unique way that, like you said, you were kind of on your toes most of the movie because you're like, what on earth is happening? And just trying to see him progress through this. And then, you know, that unreliable narrator where he does, towards the end, everything he said he didn't want to do at the beginning, you know, making a love story or, you know, car chases and stuff like that. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny because like all the things he kind of hints at throughout the movie, he ends up doing. Throughout the movie, there is like a little bit of like a narration going on, and then eventually, once he takes like a writing course with the one guy, what's his name? You know?
Brian Cox from Succession. As soon as because his brother Donald keeps saying, "Oh, Charlie, you should really take so-and-so." Let me look up the name if I can find it. You really should take this guy's class. He's so good. I learned so much about screenwriting from him. He goes, no, you wouldn't do that. That's like the one thing you don't do in screenwriting. And he's mad at his brother the whole time because it's all like that cliche stuff that you do in writing where you really shouldn't do it. And he finally goes and takes the class, and it's Brian Cox, which he's from one of my favorite shows, Succession. And he's that same character pretty much. He's like, if you ever do this in your writing, you better fuck off, you know. And Charlie's like, oh, shoot, I was going to do that.
And it's funny because up until that point, he's like doing narration throughout the movie a little bit.
Oh, yeah, don't do narration.
Yeah, and then suddenly it stops, and there's no more narration throughout the whole rest of the movie because he's told how bad it is. And it's meta stuff, like Adam said, like that really make this movie kind of interesting because it starts off like just Charlie Kaufman, and again, I think this is one of the best performances we've ever gotten from Nick Cage, and I think this really shows how good of an actor he can be, because he's playing Charlie Kaufman as like this very uncertain, very like unstable kind of character, where he wants to do something special with his life, and maybe that kind of speaks to him as an actor, I think, in some ways, so maybe that's how he is able to relate, and why he picks like these really crazy and obnoxious roles. Like we always talk about, like, why would he pick like A Vampire's Kiss and then go and do like National Treasure and then Ghost Rider and then a Western or a horror? Like, he kind of wants to find something special and adapt it to his way, and that's why he always kind of changes the character, I think, when he gets his hands on it. It's something that I think he's trying to find like his own path in life too with what he's adapting, and I think, again, how he relates to Charlie Kaufman that way is really interesting. And the performance, I really felt for him throughout this movie, like when he was really like kind of torn, like, I can't adapt this book. There's no narrative structure to this book. How am I supposed to adapt it? And then we're seeing the other side of it. We're seeing Meryl Streep kind of go through her interactions with Chris Cooper throughout the movie about finding the orchid and what was really going on there. And kind of like this movie also ends up, it doesn't have a very good narrative structure almost, right? Again, I keep going to like what Adam said. It's just very meta feeling and just very like, this is kind of how an adaptation goes and how we get from point A to point B. Now, what do you guys think? Was this something you would recommend to like your normal run-of-the-go moviegoer, or do you think this is something you have to be kind of like ready for to watch?
I would say definitely need to be ready to watch it. If you have like a history in, you know, media of any kind, I think that's helpful. You know, everyone consumes media, but I think if you enjoy reading, if you enjoy watching movies, I think that's just an added thing because it kind of gives you a glimpse into that process. But, you know, I was definitely caught off guard because I didn't know what to expect going into it. I really didn't know much about the movie, but I loved it. I mean, I wouldn't say nobody can watch it. I think it's for everyone, but I don't know. You definitely have to be ready for it. You can't just, you know, pop it on. You need to be engrossed in it.
Yeah, I think it's what they say, the thinking man's kind of movie. Like, you really have to be like ready for this kind of experience. It's not like, any other Nick Cage movie. For the most part, you kind of just throw on and either have a good or bad time. This one, I think you really just have to kind of invest a little bit more into it to have that kind of enjoyment. Would you say that too, Adam, for this kind of movie?
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. Yeah, and if you're not looking for a movie that you got to pay attention to, then this movie is probably not for you. At least, you have to have a right mindset going into it.
Right. And I think you'll get a lot out of it, because I think it's one of those ones where I think if you do multiple viewings of it, I think you're going to get even more out of it every single time. I couldn't even wait to watch it a second time. I still haven't yet because we got so much going on, but eventually I'm going to get around to watching it again, because I actually had a really good time. The even more interesting thing too is, so Charlie Kaufman is a real person in real life. He actually is the screenwriter for Being John Malkovich, if anyone's ever seen that movie. That's another very real meta movie, which is referenced in this movie. And it's weird how this is also an adaptation of his real life struggles with with adapting The Orchid Thief, because in real life he did want to make The Orchid Thief a movie. That was like the whole premise. Right after Being John Malkovich, he took on wanting to make The Orchid Thief, and he had a hard time writing the script. And they were asking him, like, where's your script? What do you have? He didn't know what to do. So he decided to write a movie about making that movie with an imaginary twin brother. And this is kind of what we got. And I think that's like incredibly genius when you really think about it. He didn't know how to adapt a movie, so he made a movie about adapting the movie he couldn't adapt. Does anyone else not see how brilliant that is? John, what do you think of that? Especially because it's a true story, essentially.
It's too brilliant for me. I feel like this is one of those movies that would be best to watch in like a movie theater, because you can concentrate your whole attention on just the movie. And I felt like I got lost through this movie. There's too much crap going on. And I feel like you have to definitely pay attention to this movie.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you really have to pay attention, and you kind of can't just, just casually watch it. We kind of said that before, where there is a lot more to it. But again, I think it really is a special movie you have to watch. And ironically too, I love how, again, Charlie and Donald end up getting nominated in real life for best screenplay. So an imaginary character actually was nominated for the screenplay of this movie, if anyone was ever curious. So Donald Kaufman is listed in the credits as a co-writer of this movie. The Real Cagiest Moment Award is a special award we give to Nicolas Cage as well. Cagiest performance in the movie. Now, you guys, there's not too many cagey scenes in this movie. Would you agree? I think it's a pretty subdued movie overall, wouldn't you say? Now, does anyone have one that they would like to nominate, or is there anyone that we could think? This is another one we kind of didn't discuss beforehand, but I thought I'd test to see where everybody kind of was when we got to it.
I mean, for me, I don't really have a specific one. I think it's anytime Nicolas Cage was interacting with himself was always just so interesting to see how well he did that. It was especially like the one scene that I keep thinking of is when his brother, not the main character, his brother Donald, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Donald, yep.
Was he was pitching him the idea of the movie that he wanted to do.
Here's the twist. We find out that the killer really suffers from multiple personality disorder, right? See, he's actually really the cop and the girl. All of them are him. Isn't that fucked up? The only idea more overused than serial killers is multiple personality. On top of that, you explore the notion that cop and criminal are really two aspects of the same person. See every cop movie ever made for other examples of this. Mom called it psychologically taut.
That's the one that I keep thinking of because it's like it was just so well done by Nicolas Cage, and he was both of those roles. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's kind of the one I was leaning towards too, because it does capture just that performance where he's bouncing ideas off himself. And
yeah,
it felt
exactly.
natural. It felt like this felt like legit dialogue between two brothers just talking about a movie.
When I think of Cagey, I think of kind of like zany and off the wall. And again, he's playing a real person, but when Charlie's having like I think he's kind of at his breaking point at that point. He's talking to his tape recorder. He goes, well, we're just going to do this and this. And it keeps flashing and all these different things. He's like screaming in the tape recorder. And then he goes, and I'm all just saying this in a tape recorder right now. And I thought that was like kind of his most off the wall moment. I don't know.
Yeah, because there's times where he insults himself throughout the movie. He's like, you're a bald piece of shit, you're whatever. And he goes on and on and on in the tape recorder about insulting himself. And again, those are the cagey moments, but I don't know. He had such a dimension to that character. And like you said, to play two different people where they felt like two different people, like they really did. And I think that's really impressive of a role. And again, if you ever wanted to see why Nicolas Cage is such a good actor, I think this is the movie I'm pointing people to. You know, if you, like I said, you want to see why we talk about him, at least with respect to some degree compared to some of his other roles, this is why. Look no further than Adaptation for that. John, how about you? Did you have any kind of scene that stood out to you in this movie or anything that you liked?
No, I actually agree with Adam with that scene. That was pretty impactful. I think it was just interesting the way he was able to do it so well, where he was able to work with himself or talk to himself, kind of. Right. It almost seems like he's done it. He did it a lot before preparing for this movie.
I mean, would it surprise you if I told you he did?
Not at all.
No, not at all. I mean,
it's just an everyday thing for him anyway. So he's just like, all right, yeah, sure.
Right.
I mean, nobody loves Nick Cage more than Nick Cage, right?
No, and the interesting part was, I know he said that he had his brother would come in from New York and he would actually just stand there as a body for him to talk to. And think about that. Like Adam said, we felt how natural it felt for him talking with himself. Because if you think about it, he actually was talking to his brother to some extent. So maybe that's why it was able to get more of like an emotional kind of response out of the character there. Again, just really good acting from Nicolas Cage. I can't celebrate this movie enough, which I think brings us to our final scores. I'm going to give Adaptation a 9.5 out of 10.
I'm insane. I'm Ouroboros.
I don't know what that word means.
I've written myself into my screenplay.
That's kind of weird, huh?
It's self-indulgent. It's narcissistic, it's solipsistic, it's pathetic. I'm pathetic, I'm fat and pathetic.
I'm sure you had good reasons, Charles. You're an artist.
The reason is because I'm too timid to speak to the woman who wrote the book. Because I'm pathetic. Because I have no idea how to write. Because I can't make flowers fascinating. Because I suck.
Am I in the script?
I had a fantastic time with this movie, and it's become one of my new favorite Nick Cage movies. It's definitely up there for me. Not because of the Cagiest moments and all that, which we kind of struggled to pick out, honestly, because they're all just really good scenes. This is just why I think Nicolas Cage is a fantastic actor, and when he's given the right tools and you can tell he's really enamored with the project, this is what happens. And not even that, the movie itself I think is really genius. This adaptation of an adaptation of an adaptation feels so meta, feels so right. It's just a very interesting movie that I'll find myself watching on repeat quite a few times probably in the near future, because again, I really want to enjoy this and see everything it has to offer. It's a unique film. I think if you're interested in any kind of film study or just like what goes into adapting something, even though it is a little, glamorized and, a little bit crazy towards the end, because not all of that happens, it's still an interesting ride. And I think if you're looking for something there, you're going to find it. And Nicolas Cage's performance, again, second to none. John, how about you? Where do you stand with this one?
I give this movie a 7.
Please don't hit on crew members, Donald.
What? The makeup girl? She was hitting on me, bro.
Just don't embarrass me, okay? I have to work with these people.
I won't. Anyway, listen. I meant to ask you, I need a cool way to kill people.
It's a decent movie. I enjoyed it. But it's definitely one of those ones that you more have to pay attention to than a lot of other ones that he's done. Yeah. But I thought his character was very good in this. And I thought it deserved the awards that it received too.
Yeah, we haven't really talked too much because Nicolas Cage kind of steals the show here, but all the other performances were exceptional as well. I mean, Meryl Streep was very good, and usually when she commits to a project, it usually is something interesting. And Chris Cooper actually won for Best Supporting Actor in this movie, so that's interesting even to say too. There's a lot of really good nuanced performances throughout this movie, not just Nick Cage, but again, when he is the center of the show, I think that's kind of what makes this movie that much more special. But John, I can kind of understand where you're coming from. 7 out of 10 isn't unrealistic for me. I can kind of see someone coming out with that. I just think, for me personally, maybe there was just something else I got out of it just a little bit differently than you. But again, totally respectable. I kind of get you. Adam, how about you? Where you stand with this one?
I am going to give Adaptation a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I need you to buy me a pair of binoculars.
What's Jesus and Einstein? Imagine me and you. I do. Come on. I think about you day and night. It's only right. Come on, sing with me. To think about the one you love and hold her tight. So happy together.
What the hell do you need binoculars for?
I think that it's just a very unique idea, and it really allows Nicolas Cage to have a standout performance. You know, playing two roles is just crazy. You know, for any actor, let alone Nicolas Cage. So I think that he did a very good job, and of course, this is a movie that you have to, I guess, be prepared to pay attention to. So I think that does kind of detract from it a little bit, but it's still, I thought this was a very good movie.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can alienate an audience when you think you're being a little on the high art meta level, which I think this movie does.
Right.
Because it is messy towards the middle, especially. Even though you have a lot of different things going on, I think you can kind of lose your audience a little bit with what you're doing, just because you're kind of blurring the lines, which I know, again, is the point, but you do alienate the audience just that little bit sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I could understand, again, like someone even from John's perspective saying I didn't really enjoy it that much, because nothing really wrong with thinking that. I think you're completely justified. But again, it's kind of, it'll give you as much as you want to put into it too. So if you don't want to invest like all this like researching and thinking about what they're trying to do here, you're not going to have as good a time as I think you could. But that's to each his own. You know, again, that's what an opinion is, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we all got one. Julie, how about you? Where you stand with this one?
I'm going to give Adaptation a 9.5 out of 10.
People are murdered every day. There's genocide, war, corruption. Every fucking day, somewhere in the world, somebody sacrifices his life to save somebody else. Every fucking day, someone somewhere takes a conscious decision to destroy someone else. People find love. People lose it. For Christ's sake, a child watches a mother beaten to death on the steps of a church. Someone goes hungry. Somebody else betrays his best friend for a woman. If you can't find that stuff in life, then you, my friend, don't know crap about life. And why the fuck are you wasting my 2 precious hours with your movie? I don't have any use for it. I don't have any bloody use for it.
Okay, thanks.
Nick Cage's performance was really phenomenal, as well as all of the other performers in the movie. But like we've been saying throughout this, you know, his dual role between, you know, Charlie and Donald was just so dynamic, so interesting to watch. And you really felt for the guy. Like, oh, poor guy, come on. And then the story itself, the stories themselves were very compelling. As someone who watches a lot of adaptations, like of my favorite books, you know, whether it's in a TV show or movie, I'm often very critical of them. So it was interesting to see like the other perspective of having to take a piece and then adapt it, and, you know, being true to the source material, to the artist who created it, and the struggle that person has. I enjoyed it. I look forward to watching it again, because I know each time you watch it, there's just going to be 1 or 2 more things that you can pick out of it.
Yeah, I think it's refreshing, kind of like you said, just the idea of having an adaptation about an adaptation. Like, he didn't know what to write about, so he said, why don't I write a movie about me adapting this movie? And I think that's brilliant. It wouldn't work all the time, for sure. There's a lot. I don't even know if you could even do it again, to be honest with you. This might be like the one and only time you could do it successfully. But I think it is like really interesting, especially with the struggles. Again, if you're anywhere nearly interested in what goes into this industry and what it takes to adapt a movie from a book or an article, whatever the case is, this is one of those ones to look for. But again, Nicolas Cage shows us why he's one of the cagiest of them all, which is interesting. We had a dual role this movie and a dual role in Face Off. So I don't know, that real steel cage battle, that's going to be interesting, which we're going to be seeing in the next video. So till the next time, my name's Kevin. That's John, Adam, Julie. We are your Real Movie Guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you next time.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.
And a dual